skip it to the point here with JoJo Trader. Pull up the video, right? Well, let's not even waste time. Let's pull the
Shout
video.
out to our boy, Florida boy Corey. Always has the great stuff on social media here. Are we started with JoJo? Because we got to look at all.
Let's just play the whole thing here. So let's start. Here we go. We got CJ Daniels.
We'll start. Well, yeah, we'll start. Let me go back real quick. Let me go to. Here we go. We got CJ Daniels here.
So really what you're looking for with CJ Daniels is the health, right? We know he can catch the ball. He's one of the best contested catch receivers in the country statistically. Drop rate, extremely low. Hands catcher. Made some incredible contested catches in the limited time I saw him in spring when he came back later in spring. Made a one-handed catch that people are still buzzing about. So really this is what you want to see right here is just the suddenness, the comfort level. He had foot surgery before the season to fix a nagging, or before the spring to fix a nagging injury that he had at LSU. And look, I mean, to me, his workouts, everybody looks good at workouts, but I see twitchiness. You could see pretty clear he's a big guy. And to me, my standard with Daniels is if he can replace Horton's production last year, which I think he's more than capable of doing. I thought Horton's production last year, not what Horton might do at Alabama this year, but just Horton for us last year. There's the one-handed catch. I think he's going to be a successful pickup. Anything he gives us on top of that, maybe some of that dynamic play we saw at Liberty with 20-plus yards per catch, that'd be a bonus. But I think, this is going to give Carson Beck somebody who can catch the ball consistently, who's going to use his body, similar to what Horton did for Cam Ward last year on all those third down slants, similar to really what Kobe Young did for Carson Beck in 2024. Carson Beck loves to challenge defensive backs, contested catches. He's not afraid to throw to a receiver that's covered if he thinks his receiver can catch the ball. A lot of times that didn't happen last year, George. That's why they led the nation in drops. But I think CJ Daniels and Carson Beck, on top of being the same age, they're a nice fit stylistically.
Yeah, I've said a few times in the last couple of weeks that Daniels is my pick to be the leading receiver on the team, and I think we'll see what he ends up being in terms of draft stock, but obviously was not healthy last year. And it's always a kind of a guessing game to see if he's going to come back at 100%. But I think stuff like this is a good sign. The fact that he was actually cleared to be involved at the end of spring practice there was a big sign, I think, D. And you mentioned the size. You see some of the quicks there. I still think he can regain some of that form from Liberty and some of these ACC defenses. Let's keep that in mind. I think he can do some real work on some of these secondaries.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%, man. I think he can do a hell of a job. And just looking at PFF, so his drop grade, and look, PFF, again, I'm 50-50 on some stuff. I like what they do. Some stuff I think, it's kind of out of sync and a lot
of the stuff's out of context if you just see what the grade is on certain things.
And really hard for them to kind of get a feel for, right? So I'm not judging them for not being all over some things, because some of the things are just like, how do you really grade them without knowing all the information? So it's not
without knowing what a player's responsibility is during that play. Yes. And these games are all graded by, it's a different person pretty much for each game. So there's a different scale in terms of, or obviously there's a variance with the person who's watching the game. There is an element of opinion in there. So it's tough. I think, like we said yesterday, there's some good stuff that you can look at. But you can't just look at the grade and say that's what the player is.
100% now, but some things I do think they're good at capturing. Obviously, we talk about where guys line up. And I think also, like pass rush, are you winning or losing? That's a little easier to grade, hurries and stuff like that. And then drops. I mean, you drop it or you don't, right? So that's just a matter of watching kind of every play. Some of them are judgment calls, but I think overall drop rate is going to be pretty accurate. So with CJ Daniels, you look at LSU, and remember, he wasn't as good as he wanted to be at LSU. He looked like an NFL player coming out of Liberty, transfers to LSU, probably thinking he's going to propel himself to that first, second round with that LSU helmet, the receiving pedigree. He starts, he plays, but the separation is not there like you saw at Liberty. Was it the foot injury? We'll see. This workout is promising because he moving well, but we'll see. But one thing that you saw at LSU for sure was he had in terms of his drop grade, So higher the better. 91.4%. Actually had 0 official drops on the year. I don't know how they calculate that, but that's what they rate. They give him a 91 grade, which is elite. 0% drops. He was targeted 42 times. Sorry, targeted 56 times, had 42 catches for a 75% reception rate on targets, which is very high. So when the ball went to CJ Daniels at LSU, he caught it. And I think that's what he brings to this offense with Carson Beck, who is not someone that needs you to be wide open. He loves back shoulders. He loves placing the ball and expecting his receiver to kind of pluck it, use his body, and get it done. So I think CJ Daniels will do that. And as we saw in this clip, moving pretty well.
Well, and the last thing I'll say on Daniels before we get to JoJo here is I found the comments from Brian Kelly very interesting, near the end of the season when he was leaving and all that. And we've all seen how Brian Kelly can be, right? And he maybe isn't always the most gracious person. And he was very positive in his words about CJ Daniels, talking about pretty much just putting it on the injury, saying he wasn't healthy this year, right? A lot of times coaches will downplay certain things when guys are out the door. So I thought that was interesting as well, right? So again, it's a health thing. It's looking good right now, but I really like what we've seen and what we've heard early on here about CJ Daniels.
No question about it. So yeah, I'm feeling good as well. We'll see how it plays out, but that workout was positive. So let's take a look at the star of the show here, JoJo Trader, because this was the talk of the message boards, CanesInSight.com, 7 million posts and counting. We were buzzing about this video right here of JoJo Trader, Miami sophomore receiver from Chaminade Madonna High School, originally from Miami Central, top 75 player. Had that breakout performance in the bowl game against Iowa State, long catch from Cam Ward for a touchdown, and really everybody's counting on him to be the best player in the receiving corps. And he's having some fun here. So for those of you who are listening on audio, what you're seeing is JoJo Trader, every single catch, and he's running routes full speed. I mean, he's doing a real receiver workout, but every single catch is a one-handed catch. I mean, every single one. And he's not like cradling it. I mean, he is grasping the ball in the air, full speed, adjusting to it, grabbing it. I mean, he really has a knack for those one-handed catches, and also the route running, very smooth, very coordinated. I mean, making catches on the sideline with one hand, keeping his feet in. He just looks the part of a smooth, naturally gifted, fluid wide receiver with tremendous route running upside. Jumps out to me with his ability to kind of change speeds and do all these things at 6'1".
Yeah, that I used the word in the title, crisp. I think that pretty much describes it. I mean, everything he's doing here just looks efficient, right? And I think that last year, I think people didn't realize how much weight he really needed to put on, right? And I think you're seeing right now he has added some good weight, and it doesn't look to be affecting the way he's moving, right? His fluidity. Now, how that translates when the pads come on, we'll see. But spring was a very, positive. It's not an improvement, but I would just say like he took the opportunity that was there for him, right? The talent has never been in question with him, but now with more reps with the ones, now with more confidence and understanding that he's the guy. Because look, coming in as a freshman last year, I'm sure he thought he was going to play more, but there was a lot of experience in front of him as well. And the way the offense was performing, obviously the opportunities weren't coming consistently for him. I know he was banged up, had a chance during that Cal game, had a drop, little things like that. I just think that he's approached this spring exactly how he's needed to.
Yeah, and look, I agree. So far, so good, but there's still more work to be done here in terms of the body. And to me, look, he missed the end of spring with the wrist injury. Obviously, he's fine now. He's catching everything with one hand. But you really need this guy to be there every single game this season. With the way there was, without bringing in an experienced playmaker in the portal, that I'd say is a true experienced playmaker, not just somebody who can help you, but somebody who is like a Restrepo go-to guy. You didn't bring that in the portal. Daniels potentially, but again, injuries there. So with Trader, you need him to be that guy, and there's a lot of pressure on him. It's not a luxury for him to be that guy. So I think he really needs to work hard on his body. And I've always heard he's a hard worker. He's tough. He's not afraid to hit people, but he needs to work on his body. The comparison, so I saw a comparison on the board to Stacey Coley, right? Someone made that comparison. I think that's a fair comparison to where he is now. I think where he ultimately needs to be and where I see his potential if he reaches his absolute ceiling, I'm thinking like a Chad Ochocinco from Miami Beach High, about a 5-minute walk from where I am right now. Chad Johnson was 6'2", fluid, smooth, great adjustment to the ball. I remember a play against Oregon State. He was cutting in and the ball was outside and he did like kind of like a matrix, totally parallel catch going the other way. Trader does stuff like that, faster than he looks, kind of changes his speeds. What happened with Chad Johnson was he was a fanatical worker, and he just worked both his route running, which was naturally fluid, but he made it sharp and deadly, his hands, and then his body. And he became, I believe when he was in the combine, Chad Johnson was about 6'2", 6'1", 6'2", similar to where Trader is now, but he's about 195. And I think that's where I think Trader, if you could get Chad Johnson, go ahead.
Not to cut you off, but this is what my next thought was going to be kind of what DC Forever Loyal says. He says, everyone's not meant to be big D money. I worry about him putting too much weight on. I want him to stay fluid. And there's always that tipping point where it goes from, yes, this guy needs to put some good strength on to he has lost a step, right? And I think that's the thing with him they need to be careful with, because his frame it's slight, right? Not to say you can't have a twitched up, frame with that with a lighter frame, but I think it's about protecting his body from those hits, playing a certain way too, right? Not leaving yourself open to taking hits across the middle as much as you can. And I kind of agree with DC here on that one. And yes, you can be strong. As Bagging Up says, you have to be strong. And yes, you do. But I've definitely seen him put some good weight on D. I know there's been some Stacey Coley comparisons. Bagging Up says Coley was much faster. Coley weighed in. I just looked it up. Coley was 4.45 of the combine, but 185. Right, like that's pretty small.
That's where Trader is now. So he's gotten a lot better in that. When I make the Ocho Cinco comparison, and there's a lyric there, he's saying, he moves just like Ocho, slightly less crisp with the footwork. I would agree. I think that's part of, Chad Johnson was a crazy worker. That guy was working constantly in his routes. I think Trader needs some of that. Not that he's not a hard worker at all. I haven't heard anything like that. In fact, everything I heard about him is good. But just, that's a good model as far as someone who worked his way into an NFL star. But when I compare it to Chad Johnson was now, I don't think anybody would call Chad Johnson a bulky guy.
Wiry, though.
Wiry. That's what I think. That's where I think Trader needs to get to. That's why I say he's 185-ish now. If he gets to 195, I don't think that's bulky, but I think he'd be sturdy. I think the NBA players, right? Like Steph Curry. No one's going to say Steph Curry's a bulky guy, but Steph Curry's a lot more solid than he was, 10 years ago, right? So I think it's about being sturdy. It's not about being like Trader's not going to be the guy that's going to be pushing guys off and just bullying guys at the catch point. That's really not who he is. But if he could just be sturdy, that when he's running one of those routes, he doesn't get thrown off by somebody bumping him a little bit, and he can just kind of play through it and just in general, run after the catch, which look, you saw him in the bowl game, stiff arm, get that touchdown. He has that. If you can just get a little sturdier, a little more durable. Again, I think 195, 6'2", 195. Chad Johnson was, I think, 6'2", 195, like 4.55. I think Trader can easily get there, maybe a little faster. And then the route running that Chad had. I think Trader has tremendous route running talent because you see him. He's fluid. He could change speeds. He's natural. But being fluid and all that's part of the equation. You have to work your way into being a route runner. So I think that's something that we could see. Mike the Kid's saying, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'm shocked you used Curry and not like Tyler Hero.
Hero's gotten stronger. Listen, Hero got stronger this year and he had a much better year. That's an example of a guy. right? I mean, Tyler Hero's, you're not going to call Tyler Hero a super bulky guy, but he got a lot sturdier this year and his finishing got a lot better. You see that all over the NBA. They're not going to get big and heavy, but they're going to just be a little sturdier, stronger in their core.
Core strength. Yeah. Core. I was going to say core. That's like when we did a lot of the pre-draft combine training that our guys did was it's not just getting yourself like bigger physically and getting yourself faster, right? There's only a couple months to train, but like it's really about tightening up a lot of things, correcting some deficiencies in your body. Like one hamstring may be stronger than the next, and a lot of that is, you know, based on your core strength and just the like that was the focus for a lot of guys. And I think someone like JoJo, that's going to be, you know, more important than putting up a bunch of weight in the weight room necessarily.
Good. So great comment here from Mike Cam. He's saying JoJo practice with both hands and then tuck. That's a game day situation, you know, because he's doing the one-handers. It's funny. I was watching, I was just, you know, I'm doing deep dives on everything in this time of year. So I was watching JoJo from Under Armour, and in the Under Armour practices, he was doing the same thing. Everything was one-handed unless it was like a competitive drill. So, you know, there's a fine line between not taking practice seriously and not being engaged and really locked in when what you're doing. There's also the athletic arrogance that he has, which I think is one of his strengths. When you watch him in person, the guy he's very confident in athleticism. He's the kind of guy he'll catch a touchdown, then he'll do a front flip once he gets to the end zone. You know, when he's playing fluid and kind of like with that confidence, that's when he's at his best. So you don't want to take away that confidence that makes him do special things, but at the same time, you want him to work on and getting ready to play games. So it's a fine line. I leave that to the coaches. Obviously, there's no coaches here. This is a player-led workout, but certainly the fact that he can do it and catch those one-handers so easily, that's impressive to me. DC saying, you know, looks good for his size. Malachi Tony looks like he's ready physically. Strong guy. The intangibles of Malachi Tony, again, I hear are just off the charts. Work ethic, the stuff he does to get ready to play at the college level, at the high school level. I mean, he is, from what I've heard, A+++ from an intangible standpoint. And, you know, I just compared JoJo to Chad Johnson. I don't think he is, that's just like, he could be that, but I don't, you know, that's a small percentage outcome to be one of the best players in the world, which Chad was for many years. So I just say kind of at the same age, I see similarities. Same thing with Tony. I'm going to say this, but not because I think this is what the outcome is going to be, because this is a small percentage outcome. But just if I'm just looking at them at 17 years old, 18 years old, I do see some similarities to Antonio Brown, because Antonio Brown was a quarterback, a lefty quarterback, but he was also a quarterback around the same size as Malachi Tony. Really good.
And you're talking about AB, not his father, Antonio De La Brown.
Exactly. Not his father. It's kind of like Chris Johnson. Not comparing it to the guy that gave him the name, the other Antonio Brown, the one that played.
De La Brown was a baller himself, though,
and really fast. I'm not sure the son is as fast as the dad, but the dad, if I recall, was like a 4.4 kind of guy, whereas the son, I think, is more like Antonio Brown, which is like Antonio Brown's like a 4.5 kind of guy, but the quickness, just the overall instincts and feel for the game. You know, Antonio Brown was a maniac, but he was very smart in football. And really hard worker. So I see those traits with Malachi. And again, former quarterback. Antonio Brown lefty, but also a quarterback at Norland, whereas Malachi Tony was always a quarterback, played quarterback in the state championship game for American Heritage, brought it home. So I see similarities there. Again, when I make these comparisons, I'm not saying that you're going to see JoJo Trader make multiple Pro Bowls. You're going to see Malachi Tony potentially be a Hall of Fame NFL player. I'm just saying, if you look at them at the same age, you're trying to figure out like what their kind of their physical profile is and just kind of how they like to play. I'd see that as like, hey, that's the guy you look at and try to emulate.
Ken says De La beat Hester in a foot race.
That's the legend, man. So, you know, that's
sorry. I was gonna say we also have Keelan Marion video here, and then I also just pulled up because I saw a comment, someone asking about Chance Robinson. There's Chance Robinson's dad had posted some workout videos of him yesterday as well. So let me pull up Keelan Marion first.
While you're pulling Marion, I want to get to a couple questions here. So my boy, designed by Adrian Lorenzo, former MLB exec, 2-time World Series champion. If you guys are baseball fans, check out El Big League Show. I posted it on CanesInSight.com. You can also just go to YouTube, write El Big League Show. We break down the major leagues, college baseball. Of course, we got the Canes here in a few minutes here. international, I mean, Japanese, with the NPB, Korean baseball, we are all over the place. But one thing Adrian's saying here, again, former MLB exec, 2-time champion, there's high correlation between the moment players reach their strength ceilings and the moment they become what you projected them to be overall. Rarely before that. Grown man sports. Adrian was a head of international for the Marlins, worked high up international in the Red Sox. So saw a lot of guys that were kind of skinny, right? Kind of look like JoJo Trader, right? Those Dominican players who they're not physically mature. It takes them years to kind of get their body right when they're over here. And then when they do, boom, huge takeoff. Ceddanne Rafaela, who is a center fielder, shortstop for the Red Sox, multi-million-dollar player, actually signed by Adrian, I believe is at 14. One of those guys that took him a while, but when he hit. If you're an MLB fan, you know exactly who that is. So that's my boy Adrian. Check out El Big League Show. Brandon saying, D, on the next El Big League show, can you talk to Adrian about the MLB needing a salary floor for cheap owners to actually spend? Great topic. Adrian, write that one down because that's a good one. I wish the Marlins had some floors that they couldn't get past, but some nice young players there. All right, back to football here. Keelan Marion. So Keelan Marion, third guy in this workout crew, and this is where I think you're seeing this is not playing to his strengths, right? So Keelan Marion is the wide receiver from BYU, All-American kick returner, 4-star transfer. I think he was a 92 ranked transfer, which is like an NFL day 3 grade from Cooper Batania and the 247 guys. So this is a highly ranked transfer, highest ranked transfer portal receiver in the spring portal. What I see with Marion, it's not like he can't run routes. I mean, this is a guy who's, I think he's 23, so he's been in college for a while. You see explosiveness. His size, which you could see in pads, this is a real 200-pound player. This is not like a skinny little punt returner. But I think with him, when I watch him, I see a guy he's getting better as a receiver. I don't see him as a natural receiver, although just by virtue of being in college so long, he's improved. I think there's a guy, jet sweeps, kickoff returns, screens, get the ball in his hands, because at 200 pounds, he's very explosive. And he has that grown man strength to break tackles, and he has the speed. So kind of a unique skill set. I'm not saying, again, that he is Cordarrelle Patterson talent. I am saying Cordarrelle Patterson role in college probably makes sense for what he's doing.
Yeah, sounds about right. Let me tell you, though, this is the exact type of work he needs now in the offseason. I think this is great stuff. All these guys, but these are the refining of the little things that can help him expand his role. So I'm sure Coach Dawson has an idea and a plan for him. And I'm also sure that obviously this is a nice situation for him in Miami, but part of the recruiting pitch to him had to have been, look, we're going to use you in an expanded role, because he was obviously seeing that at BYU.
No question. And look, one thing with Beck, when I watched him at Georgia last year, last year he didn't have Ladd McConkey. He didn't have Brock Bowers. Kobe Young was his favorite receiver, who would have really been the 5th receiver in Miami probably. And he was out due to a domestic violence situation. So he kind of didn't have a go-to receiver, and he had to throw, spread the ball around. And I think you saw him spread the ball around effectively and find different receivers. So a lot of drops, but he had different guys targeted. So I think you'll see that here, where he's going to look for the open man.
Yep. And then I have Chance Robinson video here too.
Yeah, let's take a look at Chance. This is like
not the same workout, but right, as these other guys. But
this is like Bigfoot, because you just haven't seen Chance Robinson
now
healthy.
This is his dad who tweeted it, and you see the comment, praying for a healthy season. It's go time, son. And we've said this is what it's come down to with him. It has not been a talent with him, but you see his size though, man.
And he's had this since the beginning. And I've always been a Chance Robinson fan because he's a physical player. He's some guys are big, they're not physical. This guy's big and physical. He's always been ready to block. He's always been ready to catch over the middle, do things that you need your wide receivers to do. We had Horton last year, was a big physical receiver for us. So with him, it's 100% health. We get a million questions about Chance Robinson. He's a very popular guy, and I always say the same thing. I mean, I want to see him too. I would love to talk about Chance Robinson, but you can't talk about somebody who's not playing. So this is very encouraging. The fact that he's healthy, he's going to have a chance, man. There's a lot of young talent in the receiver room. I thought the last 2 receiver classes were very good, meaning JoJo, Nikar, Chance, and then the 3 guys we brought in this summer. this spring with Malachi Tony, Josh Moore, and Dalen Upshaw. And then you got 2 guys coming in from the portal in Keelan Marion and Tony Johnson. I thought Chance Robinson fell back because he was hurt. Nykar, because he was hurt and not as where he needed to be, kind of fell back. The 3 freshmen were outstanding. You didn't see any of the 3 freshmen there, but those guys work extra all the time. Josh Moore, Malachi, Dalen Upshaw, those guys are big-time workers. I always saw them after practice on the jugs machine, and they made a lot of plays. So good competition. Is Nykar going to Nykar flirted with the portal? Because, again, the freshman I thought outperformed him in spring. I thought Nykar was excellent the year before that. So it's kind of like he took a step back. Is he going to come back and take a huge step forward in the summer? Now he's felt the competition. He's decided to return to Miami. Chance Robinson is going to play and do his thing. It's going to be very interesting to see how this wide receiver core, fits. And look, if JoJo Trader needs to put on some weight, I know a Cuban restaurant in the Dayland Mall Dining Pavilion that can take care of him. That is Islas Canarias, the #1 Cuban restaurant on planet Earth. 7 different types of croquetas. JoJo Trader could probably use that OG ham just to get him right. But they got, steaks, all kinds of just classic Cuban dishes, 40 plus years and counting. If you're on the go, you can grab an empanada, you can grab pastelito, you can grab one of the handhelds, Cuban sandwich, of course, croqueta preparada, all that kind of stuff, vaca frita, everything you want, you got at Islas Canarias, right there in the Dayland Mall Dining Pavilion. And we know that Johnny Lagoon loves that kimchi pork.